Rising prices are affecting the ability to meet day-to-day expenses for most of the people. It found that rising prices are affecting the ability to meet day-to-day expenses such as transportation, housing, food, and clothing. As a result, people are adjusting their behavior to adapt to this new reality, including adjusting their spending habits and delaying the purchase of a home or moving to a new rental. Over the past year, consumer inflation has steadily increased, reaching a year-over-year increase of 6.8% in April 2022. Heightened consumer demand and challenges to the supply chain are some of the main factors contributing to higher prices. People adjusted their spending habits and lifestyle to cope with inflation. In order to deal with rising prices, people sought out sales and promotions. Meanwhile, 47% have found themselves purchasing cheaper alternatives and 45% have delayed making a purchase in response to rising prices. In addition to making changes to their spending habits, people have had to borrow money from friends or relatives, take on additional debt or use credit to meet day-to-day expenses. Rising prices are also affecting people to save. People said they have had to draw on their savings in order to pay their expenses. Another 29% said they were saving less, and 19% reported they are no longer able to save each month. Younger community are even more concerned about their ability to afford housing or rent. Another major area of concern is housing costs. Around 56% of people are very, 30%, or somewhat, 26%, concerned about whether they can afford housing or rent. Shelter prices, including rented accommodation, owned accommodation and water, fuel and electricity, rose 7.4% year-over-year in April 2022, the largest increase since 1983. Differences between age groups were particularly significant. Younger aged 15 to 29, 53%, and 30 to 39, 39%, were more than twice as likely as those 40 and above, 20%, to report being very concerned about their ability to afford housing or rent. This could be because older people are more likely to have already purchased and paid off their home. These concerns have led to changes in behavior among youth and younger adults. 39% of those aged 15 to 29 and 38% of those aged 30 to 39 said that they wanted to buy a home or move to a new rental but decided not to because of price concerns, compared with 24% of the overall population. Why everything you want is out of stock or more expensive. As the global economy roars back after 2 years of lockdowns due to the COVID-19 pandemic, supply chains are getting congested, causing consumers to find many products they want to be out of stock, or with higher price tags. Let's find out how the global supply chain system works and how this crisis happened. As we all got stuck at home in the first wave of the pandemic in 2020, we started buying more things. Instead of spending on restaurants and gym subscriptions, we started ordering, say, baking gear and dumbbells to work out in the living room. Globally, consumer demand shifted away from services and toward manufactured products. For consumers, the supply chain logjams don't just mean emptier store shelves, out-of-stock signs or frustratingly long delivery times. They also mean price increases, as manufacturers and retailers pass the higher costs they're facing due to supply delays and shortages onto shoppers. Here's how the COVID-19 pandemic is exposing the vulnerabilities of the world's logistics networks. It doesn't help that while global demand for consumer goods and manufacturing inputs bounced back quickly after the onset of COVID-19 and soared past pre-pandemic levels, suppliers and shippers struggled to ramp up activity. As lockdowns spread from Asia to Europe and then North America in the early months of 2020, both manufacturers and transportation service providers drastically scaled back capacity. By the summer of 2020, things were looking up, and consumers were ordering everything from patio furniture to standing bikes, anything that would make housebound pandemic life a little less dreary. But while placing an order online takes little more than a click of the mouse, factories and transportation firms had to call back staff and work with COVID-19 safety protocols, among many other issues. When you reduce capacity, you're laying off workers, you're doing various things. You don't just get those things back overnight. The fact itself that many factories restarted at the same time after weeks of idling contributed to creating supply chain clogs. All those goods are trying to get on containers at the same time. Shipping containers, meanwhile, weren't where they were supposed to be. By the spring of 2021, factories in Asia were humming away making products and parts to be shipped abroad. Containers loaded with exports from Asia headed out to Europe and North America, but because much of the rest of the world was still implementing strict COVID-19 restrictions, those containers did not come back quickly enough. But even without the issue of containers sitting empty on the wrong side of the supply chain, it's become clear there simply aren't enough giant steel boxes for all the stuff that's supposed to crisscross the globe right now. A shortage of everything. Containers are just one of the shortages supply chain managers are trying to work around right now. The same supply-demand mismatch that has affected all kinds of manufacturing inputs and consumer products has also impacted commodities like lumber and steel. Meanwhile, inclement weather in many parts of the world as the pandemic has also triggered a wave of early retirements in a number of sectors. Canada's trucking industry, for example, is facing an estimated shortage of around 20,000 drivers. To put that in context, the number of drivers handling all of the Canada-US cross-border trade comes to about 160,000. Not only did we have a shortage of drivers prior to the pandemic, we had one of the oldest demographics in our workforce. Also resulted in shortages of agricultural products like wheat. Similarly, some major international ports have been struggling to find enough labor to offload ships, and warehouse workers are also in short supply. All the shortages are creating delays that cascade and compound through the supply chain, ultimately resulting in emptier shelves or extra long delivery times. In addition to container and fuel prices, companies are also finding that freight rates are climbing. And finally, there are wages. Employers who are struggling to fill vacancies are increasing pay in an effort to lure new workers. It all feeds into massive cost increases that companies are increasingly willing to pass on to consumers. Eventually, the pricey gridlock will clear out. Some consumers will give up on buying goods that seem perennially delayed or out of stock, while companies will figure out better workarounds, but it will take time. I think probably at some point halfway through 2022, we're going to see some resolution. When will it end? Although the pandemic has forced retailers to cut back on the variety of goods they sell, most sectors should eventually return to normal. The problem right now is that demand is increasing in a context of limited supply. So, if there are no more supply disruptions, I don't see why we won't get back to seeing the same level of product variety that we had before. But for now, could inflation continue to spiral? Not necessarily, but recovery could take a while. Even if the supply disruptions ended today, our results show that the price impact tends to last for many months. So, we might be looking at having higher than normal inflation levels for a while. Pandemic leave us reasons, forget everything and run or face everything and rise. The choice is ours. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, share and comments. Cheers!